Next we will look at the relationship between truth and reason. Remember that I am not talking about the whole of logic, but only reasonable argumentation when I refer to reason. It is fairly clear that reason is a means of understanding. Since absolute truth is independent of all understanding, reason is independent of absolute truth. In other words, reason does not necessarily lead to the truth, and likewise truth may not necessarily be reasonable. It is noteworthy to remember that the existence of absolute truth was predicated on the validity of the laws of logic. Therefore it is safe to say that all absolute truth will be rational, though possibly unreasonable. This is evident from a previous example. It certainly could have been true that aliens stole your belongings, though in light of other evidences, it was unreasonable. I will also remind you that we will assume that reason is useful for ascertaining truth. That is why we will assume that the most reasonable argument is the one that is most likely true. Now we will turn to understanding knowledge, and more accurately, the sources of knowledge. Logically speaking, we can say that we can either ascertain knowledge internally or externally. Internal knowledge is that which one can know or learn without experiencing anything. In other words, you could be a brain in a jar and still know those things. External knowledge is everything else, everything that requires some external stimulus to learn. Notice that external stimulus comes in two varieties: personal and extrapersonal experience. Because these stimuli are external, the trustworthiness of their knowledge must be accepted internally. Therefore we see that the internal source of knowledge has an additional job of accepting the trustworthiness of external sources. You will also notice that I have put names for each source of knowledge in brackets. I will continue to use these names as they will have practical understandings later. Lastly, you should notice that science, as I have defined it, fits into one source of knowledge. This, of course, is science as the process of methodological naturalism, and not science as a body of knowledge. The latter definition of science is a combination of all three sources of knowledge. In the last two slides, I wish to discuss the three states of mind in which people approach the world. The first state is the dogmatic state, who questions nothing about his beliefs. The end result is that this person will continue to believe everything they begin to believe, which will largely be due to socio-geographical reasons. This kind of person only rejects those beliefs that contradict his own. He is opposed to rationality, and therefore argumentation is useless. The philosophical state is the other extreme. This person questions everything, and thus believes nothing. Since he cannot even trust his sensory perceptions, he must be ruled by emotions and instincts. He opposes reasonability, and therefore argumentation is useless. Lastly, the practical state is someone who questions reasonably. This person believes reasonable premises. He is ruled by reasonability and rationality, and therefore argumentation is useful. From time to time, we all shift between all three states of mind. I hope to encourage you to strive toward the practical state. Do not hide behind old, flawed arguments. Do not hide behind a million unanswerable philosophical questions. Let us be reasonable, rational human beings. Lastly, I wanted to discuss several terms which act as a good corollary to the previous discussion of the three states of mind. Skepticism is being critical of arguments and evidence for a given theory. In short, it is a methodology. It is not to not believe anything, or to never take the affirmative, or likewise to always take the negative. It is a position of philosophical humility because you are willing to think critically of your own beliefs and those of others. This is what I meant by saying that a person in the practical state of mind questions reasonably. He is critical, but not overcritical. Agnosticism is simply not knowing the true, or best, argument. It is the uncertainty of your worldview. It is not a belief, it is an epistemological state. It is a position of philosophical humility because you are willing to admit that you do not know, by your credentials or expertise, or by insufficient evidence or argumentation, etc. Lastly, agnostic belief is the belief that no one can know the truth. This is not a position of philosophical humility because you are making a truth claim which philosophically cannot be proven. This statement of belief is rationally, though perhaps not reasonably, equivalent to Gnostic belief, that is, the belief that you can know the truth.